saved my dad. They started dating and found a letter. March 20th, 1963, my mom was visiting her aunt out in California, and my dad wrote to her, "Every day I wait for your letters, and then I read them just before I go to sleep at night. I dream about you sometimes." They continued dating. Mom tells a story. They were out on a date one time, and they got to discussing funeral plots, and both their parents, both my grandfathers and now my grandmothers, are buried in the same cemetery. And my dad says to Mom, "Do you want to be buried next to me?" And she says, "Is that a wedding proposal?" He changed the subject very quickly. I don't think that was the official proposal, but about a year later, after that letter was written, they did get married. February 15th, 1964. A growing family followed very shortly: Ken, Mike, the twins, Rodney, and myself. So I found a speech that he had wrote when he was president of the Water Well Association back in 1986. He says, "We had just finished drilling a well for a farmer. I asked him how he planned to pipe the water into the house. He said he would run it into the barn first, and anyone that thought more of his wife than his cows wasn't much of a farmer." I thought it was really funny at the time, but as I think about it now, it reminds me of the constant struggle we have as small business owners trying to balance our time between work and family. As each new year begins, I think about all the things I hope to improve and change, but the one thing I never want to change is the decision that I made about 15 years ago. That was to spend more time with my family. My kids are grown up now, and I realize now, more than ever, I made the right decision. We took all kinds of trips with the whole family every year, like clockwork. We would take a trip up to Grand Rapids, Minnesota, in the old car show and swap meet. This is a picture that I drew when I was in preschool, kindergarten. My family. That's Mike sitting at the table. I don't know how well you can see it there. Rodney and I are playing in the fire. Ken's hiding from my mom. She's chasing him. Who knows what antics he's up to. Over here on the end, my dad. He's carrying firewood, not just a bundle of sticks or some logs. He's got a whole tree. This is how I saw my dad when I was in kindergarten, preschool. That's how I looked up to my dad when I was a little boy. Strong. What a neat thing to look up to your dad that way. He had a rule that I didn't find out about until later in life. Rodney told me about it. He would not let himself spend more than $100 every year on any of his old tractors or trucks or cars. Everything else needed to go to the family. So he limited himself on what he was going to spend. His priority was going to be his family. Of course, the amount of stuff that he had at the end, I think at some point in time he broke that rule. There was another rule: keep your finances in order. I'm still working on that one. And then another rule he would tell me from time to time: you can have anything in life you want, just not everything. Later on, in the last few years especially, I would tease him about all of his old trucks and tractors and cars and radios and anything really. And I would say, you need to follow your own rule. You can do anything you want in life, just not everything. Narrow it down, just focus on a few things. Of course, he liked to play. He liked to work on them and start them up and drive them around. And it wasn't about finishing them, although he did finish a few. It's occurred to me since he left us that he was indeed following his own rule. It wasn't that he couldn't finish projects. He had thousands, hundreds of them. It was that I worked with him for over 30 years, helping seal wells. And we finished thousands, literally thousands of wells. Some were easy, some were hard, some were near impossible. But we got them done because work was a priority. My prop here, I went back, had it on the back table. That's a rock that somebody thought was a good idea that they were going to throw down their well. Well, about yay big, about the size of this rock, filled with all kinds of rocks and landscaping material. We fished out different pieces using different techniques, different pickers, vacuum cleaners. We got down to this one. It was wedged in there. It would not move. We could just use our strength and just pound on it. And nope. He took a drill bit, welded it onto the end of a piece of pipe. We ran that down and we drilled through that piece of rock. Drilled the hole right through it. I don't remember how long it took, quite a while. Once we got the hole through, he built a special tool. Went into the rock, had a little flopper that came down, and we were able to pound up from the bottom like that. We got it up, we got the well sealed. You can do anything you want in life, just not everything. He chose to be the best that he could be at his work. He chose to make his family his number one priority. That 1996 newspaper article that I mentioned did go on to say, working on wells remains a Johnson family tradition, but it won't be a legacy. Dad's quoted, "I've got 4 boys. They've all been in the business at one time, but now they're all in different fields." No, his legacy is not well drilling or collecting old cars and trucks, tractors, farm equipment, radios, old anything really. No, his legacy, it's in his family. It's in my family. Did I show you my picture? As neat as it was to look up to my dad for his strength when I was a little boy, as I got older, I saw him for more than just his physical strength. I saw him as patient and kind. He did not envy or boast. He was not proud, always protected, always trusted. It's a blessing beyond words that I look up to him today the same way. I looked up to him as an adult all the way until the day he died. I'm going to continue to look up to him the same way until the day I die. John Johnson, well done. We're going to invite Ken up. That's right there. Do you want me to? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. About 7 years ago, for Father's Day, I wrote my dad a poem as a gift and read it to him. And so really, today, I just wanted to share that poem with you. This is what it would be like to be John's son. This went good at practice, so wish me luck. I'll tell you about my dad, a man many people know. He's the biggest star of the John Johnson Show. There's so much about my dad, too much for just one poem. He'll sing and play the piano until the cows come home. When we all were kids, my dad was big and strong. My dad was always right. The other dads were wrong. Nixon left the White House. Us kids, we don't know why. My dad would always say, let's give him another try. When it comes to politics, the Republicans get his vote. The Democrats are simply wrong. Their ideas, they just don't float. My dad would take the family to all the old car shows. He'd buy a rusty Fender and say, I needed one of those. He always tells the truth. He would never tell a lie. Everybody says he's such an honest guy. My dad, he is a well driller. He fixes those wells too. Ask him where they are. He'll point them out to you. He brought me to his work to help him on the job, dig a trench or carry this or turn some kind of knob. What seemed like tips on well drilling when I was not too old turned out to be so much more. There were lessons about the world. He always had a project making rusty cars look nice, but he always had the time to give me some advice. Don't drink or smoke or say bad words. when you stay out all night, it didn't sound so good back then, but now I know he's right. This is just a snapshot of the man that is my dad. He is always there for me. For this I am so glad. Not everybody has a dad, or they have to find him. I am surely lucky. My dad's a perfect 10. My dad, he means a lot to me. I could go on and on, but I'll just say, I love you, Dad. From your oldest son. My dad is getting older now. I can see it in his face. I know for me, because of him, this world's a better place. Someday I'll go to heaven. I won't have to look too far. I know I'll find my father. He'll be working on God's car. Thanks for coming, everyone.
So as everybody can tell, there's a deep connection to our community and the families who have gathered here today to celebrate John's life. The family would like an opportunity. For those of you who have memories or short opportunities or memories or stories of John and your relationship with him, to give you the opportunity to share those things now. If you want to do that, you can raise your hand. I can bring the microphone over to you so you can share that story or that memory you have of John with his family today.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if I could follow Roger or Ken. That was pretty good. And I don't play any instruments like these three very gifted individuals, but I did work with, I am Chris, the oldest grandson, Ken's son, and I did work with him a lot, Grandpa. And I'll never really forget those morning car rides to the job. And you're like 18 years old and you don't want to be there, but you need money. And he's a pretty easygoing boss, so it'll work out. You know, what's 8 hours? 8 hours of mixing concrete. Or listening to him lecture you while he lays the pipe or opens the well. You know, I always thought maybe we would have got done a little quicker if we weren't constantly talking about that. You know, and then I thought the amount he was paying me for having to constantly listen to it, I don't know, it should have been more. But seriously though, as I got older, now that I think about it, I am very open-minded for having listened to him. Because I didn't agree with him always, a lot of the time. We saw differently a lot, and probably would still see differently. But that's okay, because my dad taught me to be open-minded. And I can't imagine that didn't just come from nowhere. You know, and all his siblings, Roger and Mike, Rodney, they're all you can see that they're all like their father. And I'm glad to see that I'm like my grandfather, and his other grandchildren are just like him. Maybe we're not the same, but we are like him in different ways. But, I mean, yeah, I think I got my work ethic from him, and I think that his character, just being around him enough, it would just rub off on you, even if you didn't realize it. Especially maybe being at such an impressionable age where you thought you were rebelling, but he was planting those seeds. You know, so, I don't know, not a Republican yet, we'll see. Thinking about it. Yeah, it's like kind of like what Roger said, his legacy lives on through all of us, and we're all here, and I think we're all doing great, and we come from good seed, and most of us turned out okay.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Kathy, you...
I met my husband, John, on the way to a dance hall, and it was nasty out. And my friend said, should you go or should we go? And I said, yes, we should. The dance hall, and I forgot, Withrow. And we found John and his friend in the ditch. And we picked them up and took them home. and then the next week we danced again, and then we danced again. And that's how I met my husband, John. And he's been a good husband. Someone said, did you ask John if you could go? I said, no, I told him I was going. I don't ask. So he was a good husband, and I'm glad I found him. So thank you. And thank you all for coming. This has been awesome. So seeing at my family, we said we got together once a month. So if your family is, get together once a month and be while you're alive. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Right over here. You don't have to.
Me and John did not agree on the Republicans and the Democrats. And we had a discussion. I mean, I would listen, and then I'd say, one time I said, you know, John, I don't agree with you. And he said, what? He said, did you know? And I said, I know a lot of things. And he said, all right, so when the world goes to hell in a handbasket, I'm holding you personally responsible.
Anybody else? See a word. I was kind of waiting.
I'm John Grambush. I'm part of the Salvation Army here at the Corps. And when we were younger, 40 years ago, we used to take the children or the young people from the Corps up to the Boundary Waters on a canoe trip and experiencing the North Woods. Well, there's a John Johnson story, and it's a classic because it was a messed up start, and we got up to the Boundary Waters Lake, and we were going in up on the Gunflint Trail. So it's a 5-hour drive to Grand Marais. We have another hour to go up, and we couldn't leave until 5 o'clock on Friday. So I told the pastor, Major Dahl, I said, you got to be there on time or it's going to be dark, and we'll be out on the path at night. And it's 1 mile. We had to carry the canoes, our backpacks, and all the food into the area. So we sent Dale and Mike up early, and they took all the tents with so they could go onto this island and put up all the tents, which they did. But when we, who were leaving at 5 o'clock, we got up to the Lake Tuscarora, and it was, well, one group was there, but we were waiting for the other group, and it was the pastor who was driving that van. And I said, how come you're so late? He said, well, we stopped and had pizza in Grand Marais. They had to stop at Sin and Oli's place and have pizza. So it is 11 o'clock. We are starting out the trail, and it is a black night. There is no moon. It's overcast, and we are walking in the dark. We had a mile to go through, and we're carrying all this gear, and we had 2 flashlights. So the pastor had the first, he was following the trail through the woods, and you fall over rocks and trees and all of this thing. And so we were about halfway in, and he decided we need a little time of rest because we were carrying all this stuff, plus the canoes. And we were standing in a circle. There was about 8 of us, and all of a sudden, the pastor disappeared. What happened to Mark? Well, we turned around and looked, and he had fallen in a hole. He stepped backwards, fell in the hole, and there he is, laying on his back with his hands and feet up. And good old John, he reaches down there with one hand, grabs the pack straps, picks them up and puts them on. We needed a strong man, and he filled the job completely.
Thank you, John. Let's see. All right, Clay, go ahead.
I'm Clay Johnson. I'm one of John's grandsons. I'm honestly not quite sure exactly what I want to say, but I just have, growing up, a lot of good memories with Grandpa. He would come up to Alaska, and it was always a good time, and he'd play Monopoly with us, and he never wanted to trade. He wasn't too keen on me getting Boardwalk. He always just had, like, he would come over and he'd play some piano, and I just remember I was learning piano, and his hands were just huge. Like, I don't even know how he played, like, and they barely seemed to move. He kind of just, and yeah, he would play songs for us, and yeah, he was, like a few of you have brought up, I definitely heard him go on a few political rants that I didn't quite understand. But, I mean, when you're 8, what are you going to do? There it is, yeah. But, yeah, I think he's a man of character, and I'm honored to be his grandson, and I didn't get to see him as much as I wish I could, but I'll miss him, and I'm really thankful for the family that I have, and I'm thankful that we can all be here today to honor him.
Anybody else? It's hard to say cut it off because you want to hear it. But with that, I'll invite you guys back up on the stage at this time. Kids are going to perform again. They're going to play and sing I'll Fly Away.
Some bright morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a land on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
When the shadows of this life are gone, I'll fly like a bird from these prison walls I've flown. I'll fly away, and I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, and I'll fly away.
Just a few more weary days and then
I'll fly
to a
fly away in